Well, meanwhile, as India asks Canada for credible evidence to back their bombshell allegation on the first day of their parliament, Maria spoke with the chief parliamentary advisor to the former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Here's what Garry Keller had to say.
Garry Keller, Chief Parliamentary Advisor to the former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, is joining us live. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Keller. India is asking for credible evidence that Prime Minister Trudeau said Canada has, and he said so on the floor of the House. But no information has been shared so far. Has there been an error of judgment on part of Justin Trudeau because he made that announcement inside Parliament?
Well, I think it's a very good question. I think there's a lot of question about how the Canadian government has handled this situation publicly. I know from speaking to senior officials within the government of Canada that the highest level officials have been on the ground several times in India over the previous weeks leading up to the G20 summit and to the Prime Minister's announcement, providing India with intelligence and information which they say lays out the Prime Minister's case. But of course, this information, which we've heard also from other sources, which was gathered from signals intelligence and other intelligence, it would be of a certain classified nature. And so I guess the question really is, why did the Prime Minister do what he did in terms of the process of doing this? And I think that's the question that some of the opposition parties have been asking in the House of Commons as well, to say, let's see more evidence, because what the Prime Minister put out there is obviously quite a bombshell statement and certainly rocked not just the Canada-India relationship, but the wider discussion about Canada's role in the Indo-Pacific.
Is this domestic political calculation then that is making Justin Trudeau take this path of direct confrontation, which really doesn't follow the right diplomatic protocol?
Well, it's another good question, and I think it's less perhaps than about domestic politics that one might be thinking about in sort of the Canada-India context, and more about the past recent history of the Trudeau government in dealing with allegations of foreign interference. As your viewers may know, over the past number of months, going back almost a year, there have been accusations of Chinese interference in Canadian elections, the 2019 and 2021 elections. And the government's response to that really over the past number of months has been, it's sensitive, it's classified, we can't talk about it. Parliamentarians don't have a right to see some of the evidence. We're going to appoint a special rapporteur to look at this, but otherwise not a very public-facing approach to putting the information out there. Now, the government has taken a lot of heat for that. They've taken a lot of criticism for that. So in this case, they may have felt, look, that has not helped us with Canadians who are asking for answers. We're going to do this a different way in this case, and we're going to put the allegation out there and do it in that approach and tell Canadians that we believe we have evidence, and we're going to make that public. So again, it may be in a different context than you and your viewers might be actually thinking about in terms of domestic politics.
Mr. Keller, Indian agencies have been taking action, carrying out raids against Khalistani terrorists, their handlers who are there in India. Dossiers have been shared with governments as well. My question is, does Canada not realize the threat that Khalistan, what India says Khalistan terrorists pose?
Well, I think certain segments of Canada and the Canadian political system does recognize that Canada does have a challenge and a problem when it comes to those advocating for violent action and pro-Khalistani sentiment. We've seen these fake referendums organized in parts of Canada with large Sikh populations, both in the Greater Toronto area and the Lower Mainland of Vancouver. And those have been very pointed and very aggressive campaigns. We've seen threats made, public threats against Indian diplomats in Canada to the point where the government of Canada has had to step up security and protection of Indian diplomats here in Canada. And this is the challenge that Canada and India have had, not just now, but going back many, many years in how Canada deals with its problem. Canada says, we believe in freedom of expression, and people have a right to say certain things. even if they are construed as violent. India says that is those are acts of and accusations of terrorism against India, and we demand that Canada crack down on it. So there, for many, many years and over many, many governments, there is a difference of opinion on how Canada should handle the Khalistani issue and calls for violence. But now, I think we're seeing that as the Khalistani calls in Canada amongst the community they wax and they wane over time. I think they've been on the increase lately. We've seen a much more aggressive presence by pro-Khalistani sentiments in Toronto and Vancouver advocating. And I think it's important for Canadians to know that while those sentiments are being expressed in Canada, there's almost no support whatsoever for an independent Khalistan within India. And I think that is one thing that Canadians aren't very aware of, and that certainly Canadians could be more aware of, given that, there is strong sentiment for a united India in India.
Thank you for speaking to NDTV, sir.